till the moment I'm gone. You hold me without touch. You keep me without chains. I never wanted anything so much. I'm drowned in your love and I feel your rain.
I don't want to fall another moment into your gravity. Here I am, and I stand so tall, just the way I'm supposed to be. You're onto me and all over me.
You love me 'cause I'm fragile. I thought that I was strong. You touched me for a little while, and all my fragile strength is gone.
I don't want to fall another moment into your gravity. Here I am, and I stand so tall, just the way I'm supposed to be. You're onto me and all over me.
I live here on my knees as I try to make you see that you're everything I think I need here on the ground. You're neither friend nor foe, though I can't seem to let you go. And the one thing that I still know is that you're keeping me down. You're keeping me down. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're onto me, and all over. Something always brings me back to you. Never takes too long.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, we're ready to begin. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you here tonight to the first Source Bank Commercialization Award dinner. This is a great opportunity for us to celebrate commercialization in our community. My name is Brian Ritchie. I'm the Vice President of Innovation here at Notre Dame, and I'm looking forward to all of the things that we have going for this event tonight. It's my great pleasure to welcome and introduce John Martin, who is the founder, managing partner, and co-CEO of Antares Capital. He's an ND alum of 82 in finance, here with his wife, Kathy, and Tim, who will give our invocation if you were. So come on up, John. Welcome, John.
Good evening, everyone. It is such a delight to be here for the 9th annual First Source Commercialization Awards celebration. This room is filled with remarkably gifted innovators and collaborators and creative thinkers who are looking to make a positive impact in the world. I applaud all of you for your hard work and dedication, which has brought you here tonight. Best wishes to all of our nominees as you strive to achieve your dreams. Now, as we prepare for this meal, let us pray. Dear Lord, please watch over and care for those of us gathered here tonight to celebrate the achievement of these innovators amongst us. Please continue to plant in them the seeds of wisdom, which will help them to be a force for good in our increasingly divided world. Bless the food that we are about to eat, and in particular bless those who have prepared and serve us this feast. Bless their work, and let your light shine brightly upon all of us here. Let all of us remember that the gifts that we have are due to your never-ending benevolence. We ask all of this with gratitude through Christ the Lord. Amen.
Thanks, John. We appreciate that. Just to give you a little bit of an insight into what we'll have tonight, we will, after dinner, have an opportunity to hear a few words from Chris Murphy, who's the CEO of First Source First Source Bank. And then we'll have as our keynote speaker John Mcneil, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Lyft. And then to the evening's highlight, which will be the presentation of the 2018 First Source Commercialization Award. So we'd like to invite you to enjoy dinner tonight, and I'll be back up in about a half an hour, and we'll get started with the rest of the program.
They've got their pitchforks and receipts of breeze. They're burning all the witches, even if you aren't one. So light me up, light me up, light me up. Go ahead, light me up, light me up, light me up, light me up, light me up. They say I did something bad, otherwise it feels so good. They say I did something bad, otherwise it feels so good. That's what I ever had, and I do it over and over and over again if I could. It just felt so good, good.
Thank you, Echoes. That was fantastic. I hope everybody's enjoying their dinner. We're going to go ahead and start our program. Continue to eat, relax, enjoy the evening, but hopefully you can listen while we have a few things to say as speakers here. Let me start by just making an observation. Many of you know that this week is Idea Week, and we've been having a lot of activities down at the Century Center, downtown South Bend. And after one of the sessions, I walked out, and if you know that area there in the main atrium, there's a place where you can go out and watch the river. And so I just went out and was watching that west race of the St. Joe River. And while I was just sitting there and I was just kind of zoning out for a minute, I noticed that there were a bunch of salmon making their way up that race. And I just started to watch them for a minute, and I found myself rooting for these salmon. And they would start at the bottom, and I watched one of these fish, this female hen, I'm pretty sure, bright red, heading up the race. And she started at the bottom, and she got up about halfway. And I'm like, come on, keep going. And she's just flapping her tail as fast as she could, but she got caught in a little bit of a current and washed back down into the slow water. I looked down the slow water, and there were a lot of fish down there, a lot of fish in the slow water. But then this same fish started up again. She got 3/4 of the way up, and I'm thinking to myself, you're so close. Keep going. She started to slip back a little bit, went up a little bit, slipped back, chose another way, and finally got over the top. And I was surprised at my reaction. I'm like, yes, touchdown. And I'm sure people were looking around. I mean, they're kind of like, what is going on with that guy, you know? But as I got thinking about it, I thought, you know, there is a lot that is similar about what I just witnessed there and what's going on in this community around innovation and entrepreneurship. You know, the thing that I realized is that innovation and entrepreneurship is not intuitive. It's not the obvious choice. It's certainly not the safe choice. It's not the easy choice. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. And like this fish, a lot of times you'll get halfway up the race and you're like, man, I can't go any further. And it just fails. You fall back and you have to start again. You have to maybe try a different route. You have to pivot. You have to go somewhere else. But eventually, that perseverance, if you try enough times and get into enough places and learn enough, you get over the top. So while it's not intuitive, it feels to me instinctual. In other words, there's part of this from a survival standpoint and a replication standpoint, because who gets to procreate was that female fish that made it to the top, right? Who gets to design what we do and how we do it are the innovators. They're the entrepreneurs. They're the ones who find the path. They're the ones who find the way. And so, you think about in our society where oftentimes we're creating institutions that foster ease and replication and security and the sameness over and over. In some ways that's great, but in other ways it keeps us from being innovative. And so you have to look to those institutions and those places that remove those barriers, that create ways for us to move forward and to do new things. And that's one of the reasons why in most societies that are innovative societies, you find a research university at its center, because it's an institution that allows and fosters and generates innovation, research and effort that's often not bounded by practicability, by the way. Sometimes it's just, I want to go see what that looks like. I want to just go explore that and see what's at the end of that. And if it doesn't work, it's okay to try something else. And that environment, that ability to pivot, that ability to fail forward, to try new things and then come back and try something else is exactly what allows us to succeed in the long run. That's what we're trying to create in this community. It's been here before. There's been amazing things created in this community. I found out the other day, do you know Singer sewing machine started here? I didn't know that, right? And then you got Studebaker and you got Bendix and you got Honeywell, all these companies that grew to these massive organizations and then for various reasons stopped innovating in ways that would allow them to continue over the top. So now we have to take a step back and find a different way. And how can we do that? Well, we find those ways and we get together with those and we partner. One of the great examples of entrepreneurship and success here in this community is what Chris Murphy has done, First Source. I see a number of other entrepreneurs in the audience who have made great things happen, who have found ways to move this forward. And that's what we're celebrating tonight. We're celebrating that instinct, not necessarily intuitive, but something that if we try hard enough and persevere hard enough, we find success. It's my great pleasure at this time to introduce Chris Murphy, who is the generous sponsor of this event tonight, for who we are very grateful. And if you'll join with me in welcoming Chris to the stand.
Thank you, Brian. First, I want to recognize Dan down here, who was our keynoter last year. Dan's a philosophy graduate. John, good luck. Did a wonderful job for setting us the tone last year, and we're glad you're here again with us this evening. Thank you very much. This is the 9th year, so I thought I would, maybe give a long presentation tonight about the successes over the years. Then I thought, no, I'll save that to the 10th year, so you want to be warned for next year. But thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with us success in our community. For those of you who were here earlier in the other room, you saw great recognition of a lot of good things being done here in the community, here at Idea Center, here with Innovation, at the Innovation Park, here for Idea Week. And we couldn't be more proud of the students that have stepped up, the faculty members that have stepped up. And I encourage you all to look through the inventors, the awards, and the U.S. patents awarded that are in your program. These are the people that have taken the risk and stepped up and tried to protect their intellectual property so they can go on and do some really great things in serving mankind, either with a product or a service. And that's what this award is all about, is encouraging people to do research, to then to create, then to innovate, and eventually to commercialize a product or a service and reach out and serve mankind. Father Soren wanted this university to do good in the world, to do good first in the U.S. and do good in the world. And you can't do that if you're not engaged with people in the world. So we are very, very thankful to all of you who are engaged in that way and have sought patents and are continuing to develop your intellectual property in serving the community at large. Your hard work, your dedication, your research, your discovery, and getting to market is what makes all of us proud of you and makes this community a better place. So there were statistics used earlier today about the number of businesses started, the number of people employed, the dollars invested. We have some goals for 2025 that we set as part of Sea Change 2025 that we have a great opportunity to achieve, and I think that's it. We're going to do that because of people like Brian and the team he's brought together, at Idea Center and what's happening there. So congratulations to you, Brian, and all the good you're doing. My purpose is really just nothing more than to thank all of you and to ask all of those of us from the community to continue to be involved in encouraging this kind of innovation and outreach. This award was originally designed in such a way as that we could only be given by the president or the provost. And we did that because it was important to the faculty to know that this is important, that being involved and engaged in the marketplace is where we will actually make a difference as a university. You heard the numbers in the other room about the change in research, the number of engineering faculty that have been hired, a number of other faculty in other research and graduate areas. That bodes well for us being not only a Tier 1 research university, but more importantly, a Shanghai research university, rated research university eventually. So congratulations to all of you. And I'd ask any faculty member in the audience who received a patent this past year to please stand up or was recognized with a disclosure. Any here that we could recognize? And in the other room, we recognize a number of students and faculty who had started businesses in the last year. Would you all stand up, please? Could we recognize you? Come on, I saw a number of students stand. Come on, stand up. Take a bow. Life and success is all about taking risk and reaching out. So congratulations to all of you for doing that. And I guess I'd end this with just a comment that I heard Brian say a few minutes ago. Come on, keep going, all of you. It's a long slog, but there is great success. You may have seen the announcement yesterday about Press Ganey going to build, hopefully, a $16 million facility downtown, keeping 500 people here and growing in the future. We happened to finance them and invest in them when they first started in an apartment. We've done that with a number of other businesses in the community. So all of us at First Source, we're relying on you making these investments and being successful so that we can keep growing. So from all of us, this is very self-serving. Go out there and get it done. Come on, keep going. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. There's no way we could do this without you. We appreciate that. It's my great honor now to introduce to you our keynote speaker, John Mcneil. I had the chance to meet John when he was the president of global sales and services at Tesla. He's now moved to become the COO at Lyft just recently. And I was just telling him that as soon as Lyft went public a few weeks ago that I immediately bought some stock. I tried to buy it at the listing price, but by the time I could get it, it had gone up like 30 or 40%. So then I bought it. It immediately tanked 20% below the ask price, which I blame John for at this point. So we had a conversation in the hall, and he assured me it was going to be okay, and I should just hang on for the long ride, which I was going to do anyway. I loved his comment to me, though, when he said, buying Lyft now is kind of like buying airlines in the 1930s. Okay, I'm in. Let's see where that goes. Very, very excited to have John here. John's experience as an entrepreneur earned him a reputation as both an innovator and implementer. He is the 2012 Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and in 2013 he was named Most Admired CEO in the mid-sized company category in Boston. John has founded 8 companies. What do you think about that, friend? Think about that fish. Keep falling, come back up. That's fantastic, right? He's led teams creating more than tens of thousands of jobs and multi-billion-dollar returns for investors, which I'm counting on. He co-founded Inservio in 2006, a leading SaaS, software-as-a-service platform for insurers, employing over 400 people. He's a graduate of Northwestern University. That's why I wore my purple today for him. I'm just kidding. That was a total mistake. I didn't. And as I told you, he's the president of global sales and services at Tesla Motors before becoming the COO at Lyft, and had a son here, right? And so he's a parent at Notre Dame and a good friend of the university. John, welcome.
All right, the pressure's on. I got to get back to work, make some money back for Brian. Hi, everybody. It's really great to be back here on campus. Thanks for having me. We're, as a family, grateful to Notre Dame for educating our son, but especially grateful for something that's not obvious. At least it wasn't obvious to us when we first came on campus, and that's the unique culture at this institution. Our son Connor was a sophomore when my dad died suddenly, and Connor and my dad were very close. And he was especially impacted by this, and he called me the week after the funeral. He'd come back to campus. And he said, Dad, I'm walking around campus and to classes, and people are stopping me. They're asking me if I'm okay. They're telling me that they're sorry for my loss. They're telling me they're praying for me. Professors are reaching out to support me. My rector, Father Pat, is checking on me nonstop. He said, I wasn't expecting this kind of community. It's incredible to feel cared for this way. And he was, and we are so moved by that support. And we're grateful for the leadership at this university from Father John and Dr. Burish and Dr. Affleck Graves and your entire team for the unique culture that you've created amongst a top-tier university in this country. Notre Dame not only educates, it creates a culture of caring in young people on this campus, and in that sense, Notre Dame is a light shining on a hill. Thank you. We're all lifelong fans in terms of our family for that. And for that reason, I didn't hesitate when folks reached out and said, hey, would you like to be a part of Idea Week? It checks 2 boxes for me, one Notre Dame and one being in a room with entrepreneurs. And so I want to bring greetings from the Geographic Center of Innovation and Commercialization. Just 10 days ago, it seems to have flown by, we were standing in LA. We decided to do a little different bell ringing for an IPO. We did it in a driver service center with 25 drivers ringing the bell. We didn't want to go to New York, have us stand up on a platform. We wanted to recognize the people who built the company. And so we're standing there with 25 drivers, and they rang the bell on IPO day. And that day celebrated innovation that had begun 10 years earlier. And that innovation has literally changed the face of transportation. And as I mentioned to Brian, it's just getting started. Less than 1% of miles traveled in cars in the U.S. are traveled on Lyft or Uber. This is a decades-long play. So in that sense, that's why I say it is like investing in the airlines in the 1930s. If you believe the market's going to expand, and it's a $1.2 trillion market when people are paid to being moved in ground transportation, just in the U.S., it's a ginormous opportunity. And tonight we're here to celebrate innovation. And Brian asked me to talk just to give some thoughts about where innovation comes from. What are the ingredients? And there's a lot of perspectives on that. It's a question being asked from Shanghai to South Bend, from Silicon Valley to New York. And I'm going to try to break it down into 3 sources of innovation. The first is innovators, and some of them are in the room, look for gaps. Some people, when they're faced with an obstacle, see a fence or a wall, innovators tend to look for the spaces in between those and look for the gaps. And every one of my companies that I started with a bad customer experience that we had as individuals. And then we just kind of asked, the we is my wife and I, she was my cohort in creating some of these companies. We just said, why can't this be better? Why does getting a car repaired take so long and feel so icky? Why do people own cars yet only drive them 4% of the time? And when they do drive them, they drive them alone 90% of the time. Why can't you make the world's fastest car, the world's safest car, and yet consume no fossil fuels in that process? Entrepreneurs and optimists are crazy, or entrepreneurs and innovators are crazy optimists, but they often are first drawn to a problem. And that's a little bit of a counterintuitive place for an optimist to start. And right now, there's a massive shift of power underway from manufacturer to distributor and network owner, and entrepreneurs are seeing these opportunities. Utilities don't want to own generation. They want to own the wires that distribute the power, because that's where the money is. Car manufacturers are investing heavily in transportation networks and autonomy right now because they see the ownership model in decline. Why? Because technology has emerged that enables leverage for marketing and sales organizations like never before, network effects, distribution, virality, rapid learning and feedback loops. And in addition to that, innovators look for societal shifts. And an example of this is the car industry. Cars are the second largest expense for U.S. households. Average household is about $9,000 a year of cost for the car, the gas, the insurance, the maintenance. American households actually spend more on cars than they do food, which is quite remarkable. Yet that asset is only used 4% of the time. So Scott Malpass, if we asked him, if investing in a depreciating asset that will only be utilized 4% of the time, if we asked him if that was a good investment, I think we could guess what his answer would be. No, it's not a great investment. Several years ago, I was standing on a corner in Hong Kong, and Elon and I were there to meet with the Hong Kong government and then make our way into China. And as we stood waiting for our team to pick us up, vans were circling this major center. And people would get on the van, hand the van driver the equivalent of a Hong Kong dollar, and they would be off to wherever they were going in a shared van. About every fifth car that came through was a double-decker bus. And people would hop on that bus, do the same thing, pay the equivalent of 5 Hong Kong dollars, and be on their way. And so I asked our team, I said, what's going on here? And they said, well, this is Hong Kong's transportation network. You can either do the economy class shared van for $1, or you can get air conditioning and do a double-decker bus with some comfort for $5. And I said, well, is this public or private? And they said, oh, no, it's private. I said, really? Tell me about this. And they said, well, it's owned by Henry Kwok. And I said, well, tell me about Henry Kwok. And they said, he's the second richest man in Asia. And he's done this in Hong Kong, in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Shenzhen, in Guangzhou, et cetera. And it was the first time for me that the light went on. Car sharing and ride sharing was just getting started in the US, and there was a big question about whether it could be profitable. And what I was standing in front of was a profitable model that led to a massive amount of wealth being created. And that flipped the switch in my brain that got me started thinking about ride sharing. Logan Green, the founder of Lyft, found the same thing in Zimbabwe as he visited and found people riding in shared vans. Those kind of societal shifts get entrepreneurs thinking. And there is a societal shift happening. Less than 26% of teenagers, 16-year-olds, actually get a driver's license now, 26%. So the supermajority do not. That's a societal shift to pay attention to. They don't risk drinking and driving. One of the second data points I got was coming back from that Hong Kong trip, and it was prom season. And when I went to pick our son up from prom night, I got in a line with about 20 Lyfts and Ubers, and I was one of the few parents that was up at that hour of the night. Everybody else was smart. They'd called rideshare. And these kids are smart. They can do math, and they realize that for $9,000 a year, they can take hundreds of Lyft rides or Uber rides. And so a lot of customers are doing that math, and last year 300,000 Lyft customers gave up their car because they realized the numbers actually work to their favor to not own. And those societal shifts start with, and then the technology shifts and the business shifts start with an innovator seeing a gap, a problem, and going right towards that problem, not necessarily knowing how to fix it, but actually heading towards the problem. The second source of innovation, I think, is innovators tend to flock together. And there's a lot of questions I get having spent a career in Boston and now have spent 4 years in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and people always ask me to compare and contrast. Like, why does this happen in San Francisco at such a rate? And can this be created elsewhere? And I think it can be created. There is a couple of ingredients that make innovation happen kind of with frequency within a geography. And that's a concentration of talent. There's a concentration of IQ in the Bay Area like I've never seen anywhere until I went to Shanghai. And then I started to see the same thing. And then I went to Shenzhen and started to see the same thing. That concentration of talent, if there's open information exchange and access to capital, like Chris is providing here, and regulatory encouragement, really interesting things start to happen. But I think most importantly, in places where innovation happens on a frequent basis, there are a number of successes. And those successes are celebrated and they become viral. Because innovators in some of these centers find liquidity and they build wealth. This happens in the Bay Area and other innovation centers, and the innovators put their capital right back to work funding other entrepreneurs. The headlines now in the Bay Area are about the hundreds of millionaires that are being created as the unicorns go public. And several years from now, I think the headlines are going to be about the successful companies that those successful innovators created with their capital. There is a recycling of capital that tends to happen in these geographies, that once you start to see some success, and Chris was telling me about some of the successes here in the South Bend and Elkhart area, if those entrepreneurs stay and start to fund other entrepreneurs, there's a flywheel that gets created that's really powerful. And I saw this firsthand added on an institutional academic campus. Take, for example, an institution like Harvard. 10 years ago, Harvard came to the realization that they were well behind Stanford and their neighbor MIT and other schools like Duke and Northwestern in the areas of innovation and entrepreneurship. And as a result, when kids toured those campuses and thought about enrolling, they would see great facilities at Stanford or MIT and see no facilities at Harvard. And their impression was that they wouldn't have an opportunity to put their ideas that they were learning into action. So they'd tour Harvard and they'd see a big missing gap. The good thing about Harvard was they were listening, and they recognized they were behind. So the president got intentional, and he found a multi-time successful entrepreneur, and together they worked on a strategy not only to match but exceed these peer schools. They knew that in Boston they had access to capital, but they needed to create a concentration of talent on that campus, a place where ideas could be exchanged and examples of success could be nurtured, and then that virality could start. So having a front row seat to this process was fun. I got to advise this founder of their innovation lab. And they made several key decisions. One was they wanted to concentrate talent, and so they decided to dedicate a 50,000 square foot building to innovation. They call that the iLab. You've done that first step. Chris has helped in that process with the Innovation Center here. And then they decided it was going to be university-wide for two reasons. One, so that none of the individual colleges within the university could dilute the effort by having their own. They wanted one central innovation center, and they didn't want it to be spread out or peanut buttered across different colleges, each doing their own. They wanted to do that for a second important reason, which I think is really the interesting ingredient, and that is to leverage diversity of thought. So you could have a law school student, an engineering undergrad, and a med school student get together and start a company. This was the only place on campus where this could happen. And then the third ingredient, and this was the doozy, they decided to offer it as 4-credit curriculum at GASP, a liberal arts institution. You can imagine what the tenured professor reaction was. The tenured professors pushed back hard. This type of education wasn't becoming of a liberal arts institution. And there were many, many meetings, and it took several years without progress. Until one day I happened to be at one of these debates, and somebody stood up and said, it was an HBS grad who said, "Can you tell me what clinical professors are?" Some of you who are in academia know that. These are people that have come from industry and come in and teach. They don't come from an academic background or a PhD. And then this student asked a great question of the professors. The question was, why would you deny your students the opportunity to apply what you're teaching them in class and actually practice? That broke the dam of resistance, and the iLab opened. And in 6 years, they've created hundreds of companies, and those companies are real. They've realized billions of dollars in investment. So that kind of innovation can be created, the locus of innovation. And one of those companies is mine. It started when our son was turning 16, and I didn't want him to die or kill somebody else texting while driving. And I went out and looked at the market to see if there were any products that would help with that. And it turns out that there weren't, because solving the problem actually involved a very difficult technical problem, technology problem at the heart of it. You don't want to shut down texting for passengers in cars, but you do for the driver. And the problem is knowing who's in the driver's seat. And that's not easy. because GPS doesn't help. GPS is only accurate within 10 meters or 30 feet. And so to crack that problem, I went to the iLab, and I recruited a team of engineers and physicists. It took about a year and a half, and they cracked it. They cracked the challenge. And so once they cracked it, we formed a company within the iLab that today employs more than 100. They just did a Series B valuation, or fundraising, and valued the company at over $200 million. And most importantly, that company is saving lives. Harvard intentionally created a flocking point for innovators. And as a result, it's regained its status amongst admitted freshmen as a place where they can thrive in the modern economy, combining the best of liberal arts and action. And that brings me to the third ingredient of innovation, and that is, it may be the most important one. And that is that innovators tend to drive beyond, they don't tend to, 100% of them drive beyond the idea. Any venture investor or entrepreneur will tell you there's no shortage of ideas. The shortage is of people with the drive to bring those ideas to life. And that's why I like being around entrepreneurs. They did not stop with the idea. They start to plow through challenge after challenge and hearing no, 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 and they just keep going. Entrepreneurs think differently, and this thinking and approach can be taught and caught. As Brian mentioned, I got to be around one of the, I think, the best practitioner of our craft as entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, for 3 years. When I went to work with Elon, I couldn't think of another entrepreneur who had created 4 companies in a row that were worth more than $10 billion each. Just a completely unique individual in the landscape. Jobs had one, Jobs had 1.5 with Pixar. Gates had 1, Dell had 1, Reed Hastings has had 1. John Chambers has had 1. Larry Ellison has had 1. You can go down the list. He's in a pantheon of 1. And on this trip to Hong Kong, we actually, the next day, I said to our team, could we meet with Henry Kwok, the guy that had started this personal transportation network? And they said, sure, because he'd love to meet Elon. So we had this great meeting, and after the meeting, Elon was looking out a window. We were in a tower in Hong Kong looking out over Kowloon Bay. And often in those settings, just gave him a little time. He's very introverted. And so he'd often walk away just to kind of recharge and be alone. So I gave him some time, and then I walked over. He was just staring out this window. And I walked over and stood next to him and said, what do you see? And he said, you ever notice that cities are built in 3D, but the roads are built in 2D? And I looked down, and I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that. I was like, but you're right. Like, we could look down, and we could see the traffic backed up on these 2D roads in the midst of a 3D city. And he looked at me, and he said, I've been looking out at this bay, and there are like 3 bridges that cross the bay, and it's where the constraint is. What if you could make roads in 3D by digging tunnels? So he had this idea. And it's afternoon in Hong Kong, and it's morning in California. So he gets on the phone, and he calls some engineers at SpaceX, and he asks them to start researching tunneling machines because he wants to buy one by the end of the week. Several weeks later, tunneling was started at the SpaceX location in Hawthorne, and engineers were already starting to rapidly improve a technology that hadn't seen any improvement or attention in 30 years. And they have, in 2 years, changed the entire technology of tunneling machines. And they've made it possible for roads to go in 3D. Now, when we described what we were up to, people would say, well, the sky's 3D. Why don't you just work on flying cars? Elon had gotten his pilot's license, and several of us on the team were avid flyers, and we knew how dangerous that idea was. Putting cars in the sky is not a great idea for the safety of those underneath them. But tunneling could be done for a much lower cost, and roads could be created underground that could go in all different directions to relieve traffic. That approach of immediate action on the part of that particular brain has led to reusable spacecraft, electric cars, and linking brains to computers. The entrepreneur takes an idea and starts to move. They don't know where they're going necessarily, what the end is going to look like, but they start to move. Innovators don't just ideate, they do. And that's why we're here tonight. We're celebrating some doers. They didn't just spin out ideas, but they did something about it. They commercialized them. They brought them to market. They brought them to life. And they showed great courage, tenacity, and vision that hopefully some of these ideas will change the world. And I think that's super cool. And although this is Idea Week, you may want to rename it Build Week, because the real action is not in the idea. The real action is making the ideas reality, and that's what we're here to celebrate tonight. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for having me. It's been so great to be back on this campus and see the energy behind creating an innovation here in South Bend and in the extended area. And I'm very grateful to have been a part of your night tonight. And I'd also like to say, have a second or third glass of wine, take a lift home, because that's what all the cool kids are doing, all right? Thank you very much.
John, we could add a fourth one to your list, and that's inspiring, and entrepreneurs inspiring, and you've inspired us. Thank you for taking the time to do that. Okay, now to the big event, the opportunity to make these awards. This year we had 3 very exciting nominees, and our friends from the Notre Dame Echoes have been working overtime to pair the right song with each nominee. So, Echoes, are you ready? Almost. That's all I was looking for. That's perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. 2, 3, 4. Who's gonna tell you when it could shake? Who's gonna tell you things just might break? You can't go on thinking nothing's wrong. Who's gonna print your part tonight? Who's gonna analyze your upload? Who's gonna make it strong for powder coat? Who's gonna pay attention to your dreams? Who's gonna make it right when you scream? You can't go on thinking nothing's wrong. Who's gonna print your part tonight? Who's gonna orient your part tight? Who's gonna make your metal print right? You can't go on thinking nothing's wrong. Who's gonna print your part tonight? Oh, you know you need to see your part in Atlas 3D. Oh, Who's gonna print your part tonight?
Johnson & Johnson came to the University of Notre Dame with a problem they were having with their 3D printing processes in manufacturing. It's a wonderful innovation, but there are problems in 3D printing, especially in printing of metals.
So here at Notre Dame, in collaboration with ITAMCO, a local company down in Plymouth, Indiana, Johnson & Johnson, a major corporation, faculty at the University of Pittsburgh and faculty at Ohio State University, we developed an algorithm that would help make additive manufacturing or 3D printing of metal components faster and more effective. I worked very closely with David Helsley, who is a professor at Ohio State University, Hao Peng, who was a postdoc at Notre Dame but is now currently at Atlas 3D and ITAMCO, and Rick Billow, who's in the Office of Research here at the University of Notre Dame. So 3D printing has been a major innovation in manufacturing because it allows people to print parts and components of arbitrary shape and complex shapes that they couldn't have made otherwise using conventional or traditional means. But one of the big challenges is that when you have a very complex or odd shape, was how do you print it so that it has the right properties that you need the part to have, especially when you think of something that's going to be used in the aerospace or medical industries. What used to be done is that someone would have to print many parts and test them, and they would develop rules of thumb about how to best do it. What we've developed instead is a software and an algorithm to actually predict the physics of this and allow you to digitally simulate 1,000 builds and pick what's the best build.
The product of Atlas 3D is a game changer in the industry because it vastly reduces the time and the material costs for developing new products that are 3D printed.
I think we have Rick Billow and David Go here with us tonight. Can they stand up? They're right here. Give them a hand, please. And Hao Peng, glad you're here. Okay, Echoes, I'll turn it back to you.
All it takes is one slide to mess up all our plans. Spies inside our network, picking out all the strands. I got an idea, and I know that sounds crazy. We gotta find the blockchain to make transactions hazy. I got plans tonight. There is business to be done across the world, and I was thinking I should send those records out tonight. 'Cause I got documents to sign, documents to sign, documents to sign. Tension. We could cut it with a knife. Who is looking at our software, working with it right? Do I gotta convince you that security goes deep? If we set an API up, maybe we can sleep. I got plans tonight. There is business to be done across the world, and I was thinking I should send those records out tonight. And I have documents to sign, documents to sign, documents to sign. I have documents to sign, documents to sign, documents to sign, documents to sign, documents to sign. Plans tonight. I was hoping we'd be done with that contract tonight, but I'm worried about security with you tonight. And
I have documents to sign.
Got documents to sign.
You got plans tonight, baby. I was hoping we'd be done with that contract tonight, but I'm worried about security with you tonight. And I have documents to sign. Documents to sign. Documents to sign.
Blockchaining tonight.
SIMBA Chain is a game changer in the blockchain market. Blockchain is like a distributed database or distributed ledger to which you can write transactions, and once you write them, you cannot change them. No one can change these transactions, including you. And this is very important for, especially in transactional world.
So having non-reputable data is very important because, especially in a distributed context, because the data becomes trusted. So without any central administrator, you can, within this decentralized environment, you can have trusted data because you know that somebody can't go in and change it.
So in 2016, Ian and I and two colleagues from Itamco, Joel and Gary Nadick, we had this idea of developing a secure communication application on blockchain. Very soon after we started working on this, we discovered that working with blockchain is very, very difficult.
Yeah, so there's a number of applications in blockchain, but it's very difficult to use. So for example, a couple of years ago, I asked two programmers to look at Ethereum, which is a blockchain system. They're programmers at the Center for Research Computing, and they're excellent programmers, right? So they went off and tried to understand what a smart contract was, what a blockchain was, how you interact with it, what are the tools needed. It took them about a month to figure that out. And I thought, wow, you know, if it takes a month for every programmer to figure out just to be able to write information to this system, then, you know, across all industries in America, there's a lot of kind of time, you know, wasted there. So we came up with the idea for SIMBA Chain to take that month learning curve and reduce it down to 10 minutes. So that was our goal. And I think we achieved that.
By using SIMBA, you avoid lock-in to a particular technology. You can actually connect your applications and run your applications on any blockchain. Second, you save lots of time. I mean, we provide a very high-level API that lets you build blockchain applications in basically minutes. We also give you a code. We auto-generate the code for you to connect your distributed applications on the blockchain to your enterprise systems. So you can easily, you know, integrate the code that we generate for blockchains with your enterprise applications.
We have Jarek, Nabrzyski, and Ian Taylor here. Can you both stand, please, as the nominees? Okay, and for our final nomination, Echoes, take it away.
You're just too good to be true. Won't take my eye off of you. It's true, we don't need to touch. I see your heart rate is up. At long last you've arrived, and I want to keep you alive. You're just too good to be true. Won't take my eye off of you. I watch you breathe out and in. I measure right through your skin. Open the app on my phone. I see your heart rate is slowed. There are no words left to speak. Now I can't go back to sleep. You're just too good to be true. Won't take my eye off of you. I love you, baby. And if it's quite alright, I need you, baby. All through this day and night, I worry, baby. The vital few sounds that chime, oh yeah. My pretty baby gives data in real time, oh pretty baby. Even when you cry, just too good to be true. Won't take my eye off of you. I've got the latest in tech to watch the pulse in your neck. Perturbing radio waves, catching the tiniest change. You're just too good to be true. Won't take my eye off of you. And then my baby could be when I get home. You watch me, baby. He's gonna have an app on your phone. Don't worry, baby. Mr. Krabs got it right. Oh yeah. I love you, baby. And if it's quite alright, I'll watch you, baby, all through the day and night. Baby, the vital view sounds the chime, oh yeah. You're just too good to be
So of course, baby monitors have the goal of monitoring your children, and I've had 9 children, so I've done that very well, and use those kind of devices. The technology that we work on and that we have been working on is a radio frequency technology. It basically involves the transmission of signals and the reception of signals, and anything in that path between those alter the signals. What our technology brings to the table is a way to monitor vital signs of the child, so both the respiration and the heartbeat of a child, and to do so remotely, where you don't need to have something actually touching the baby. I anticipate that the VitalView product would do the same kind of things that other devices already do, but it will add that additional capability of being able to monitor vital signs, so the heart and the respiration, which gives the parents, a little bit more assuredness that their child is okay. As an engineer, as a researcher, a dream is to do something that has a positive effect in the world, and the ideas that are being pursued with VitalView and baby video monitoring offers, I think, a great opportunity that could lead actually to a dream of mine to do something for the force of good.
Tom is here. Tom, would you please stand? Let's recognize Tom. And now to help us present this award, I'd like to invite Father John Jenkins, the president of Notre Dame and our patron, and so grateful for all he does for us, and Chris Murphy, again, come back up and we'll let you do the announcing. The envelope.
I always wanted to be in the Academy Awards, and so what a treat this is. So, the winner is there suspense out there? SIMBA Chain, Nabrzyski and Ian Taylor.
Thank you. I should just say, for those of you that don't know, Yarrick leads our Computing Resource Center here on campus, and Ian has been recognized as one of the top 40 in the world in blockchain. So I'll turn the time over to them for just a minute to say a little something. Congratulations, both of you.
Thank you. What can you say, really? So I came to Notre Dame about 3 years ago, And I came here, I'd sort of successfully avoided academia in America for the 20 years that I've lived here. I've always been a professor in Cardiff University in the UK, but I wanted to come and do something disruptive, and I think SIMBA Chain is that. It wasn't obviously, it wasn't obvious at the start, but it's become that, and it's just fantastic to work on SIMBA Chain, fantastic to work with Joel and Gary, and have the team and support the family and Notre Dame as well. It's just awesome. Thanks.
Thank you for this, and we kind of expected this. No, very great competition, and Tom and Rick and David, congratulations! It's amazing, and I'm just in shock. I wanted to say thank you for the Nedick family. I think without them we couldn't be able to do it. They were great. They've been great, and they are great entrepreneurs, and they took the ideas, and basically, I think they're going to sell them for a lot of money. I want to thank Ian, because he's the brain of all this, and we've been friends for 20 years, and I really want to thank him for our friendship. He's one of the greatest people I've met, and he's always successful. So it's just the beginning, I think. Now I'm speaking as a CRC. Director, I really want to thank today Idea Center. What you guys bring to campus is amazing. And I think there is a great future for Notre Dame and for the entrepreneurs here at Notre Dame. So, we'll do everything to help you. We are one team. And thank you very much for this recognition. Thank you very much.
You got plans tonight, baby. I was hoping we'd be done with that contract tonight, but I'm worried about security with you tonight. And I have documents to sign. Documents to sign. Documents to sign.
It's now my privilege to invite Father John Jenkins back up for a few thoughts in the benediction. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for coming.
Well, congratulations to our winners, but congratulations to everyone for such marvelous ideas to bring to this competition. But I just want to say just how excited I am for this evening, for everything that's happening here with innovation, with entrepreneurship. I want to thank John Mcneil for his wonderful words. I was able to hear those, just very exciting. It's just an exciting time at Notre Dame. But all this would not be possible without Chris Murphy and First Source making it possible. Not only to support these wonderful innovators, to develop their ideas, but also to vitalize this community, to provide businesses, to provide ideas that this community can flourish. It's just a wonderful combination of Chris and providing the resources of brilliant minds coming up with ideas, of a university, a place for ideas, partnering with the community. It's just a wonderful synergy, and I just couldn't be more excited, and thank all of you. Thanks for, this is a great day for Notre Dame, and thank you. Keep up the great work. Great gifts, great minds, and great promises here. So let's give thanks. Lord God, we thank you for this meal, and we thank you for bringing us together. We thank you for the wonderful creativity of these entrepreneurs that have generated these remarkable ideas. We thank you for those who support them, who finance them. We thank you for all who involved in them. We ask that they bring great success not only for the developers, but for businesses, for jobs they will create, and to help our society and help our community. Lord, you give us great gifts. Help us always to be grateful, and help us to use them well to serve your people. And we pray this in your name. Amen. Thank you very much.